You think Navy SEALs are tough? Wait till you hear about the unit with a 98% dropout rate. These guys are so elite, they make regular soldiers look like Boy Scouts. We're counting down the 15 deadliest special forces in the world, and trust me, some of these units are so secretive, most people don't even know they exist. You won't believe what number 7 can do. The unit that makes Navy SEALs look like Boy Scouts. Alright, check this out. There's this special forces unit that's so hardcore, even Navy SEALs are like, nah, we're good. These guys are called Delta Force, and they're basically the Navy SEALs' big brother. But here's the crazy part. Their training is so brutal that 90% of the people who try to join don't make it through. That's right, only 1 out of 10 dudes actually become Delta Force operators. So what makes Delta Force training so insane? Well, for starters, they gotta do stuff like march 40 miles in the mountains while carrying 70 pounds of gear, and they gotta do it in under 24 hours. That's like hiking a marathon and a half with a small child strapped to your back. But that ain't even the craziest part. These Delta Force dudes learn all kinds of wild skills. They're not just about shooting guns and blowing stuff up. Nah, they learn how to pick locks like master thieves, make bombs like some kind of mad scientists, and even fly planes. It's like they're training to be James Bond or something. But here's the thing. Delta Force is so secretive that the government didn't even admit they existed until like 20 years after they were formed. Can you imagine that? There's this group of super soldiers running around doing crazy missions, and the government's just like, Delta who? Never heard of them. So what kind of missions does Delta Force actually do? Well, they're basically America's go-to team for the craziest, most dangerous missions out there. If there's a terrorist leader hiding in some remote mountain cave, Delta Force is probably the ones going in to take him out. If there's a hostage situation that's too dangerous for regular troops, you can bet Delta Force is on the job. These guys have been involved in some of the most high-profile military operations in recent history. They were part of the team that took down Osama bin Laden. They've rescued hostages in places where most people wouldn't even dare to go, and they've done stuff so classified that we might never know about it. But here's the crazy thing. As badass as Delta Force is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more insane. I'm talking about a group of guys who are so tough, so elite, that they make even Delta Force look like amateurs. These dudes are like the special forces of special forces, the cream of the crop, the absolute best of the best. The SAS, Britain's baddest dudes. Think Delta Force is tough? Wait till you hear about these British dudes called the SAS. These guys are like the OGs of special forces. They've been kicking butt since World War II, when most countries didn't even know what special forces were. The SAS is basically the granddaddy of all modern special forces. These guys invented a bunch of tactics that everyone else copied, like how to rescue hostages without getting them killed. They're so badass that even Delta Force takes notes from their playbook. You want to know how crazy these guys are? Check this out. They got this saying, who dares wins, because they're always taking on the most insane missions. It's like they look at a situation, think, that's impossible, and then go do it anyway. But here's the wildest part. Back in World War II, just 55 SAS dudes took out like 100 Nazi planes behind enemy lines. That's right, 55 guys sneaking around and blowing up 100 planes while surrounded by Nazis. It's like something out of Hollywood, but these guys actually did it. Now, you might be thinking their training can't be that much tougher than Delta Force, right? Wrong. The SAS selection process is so intense that sometimes people straight up die during it. Yeah, you heard that right. Die. They push these guys so hard that their bodies just give out. That's how you know they're only taking the absolute toughest of the tough. But it ain't just about being tough. These SAS guys are smart too. They're trained to blend in anywhere, speak different languages, and think on their feet. They can go from looking like your average Joe on the street to taking out a terrorist cell in the blink of an eye. The SAS has been involved in some of the craziest operations you've never heard of. They've taken down hijacked planes, rescued hostages in the middle of war zones, and even helped hunt down some of the world's most wanted criminals. But most of their missions are so secret, we might never know about them. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to copy them. The US Delta Force, modeled after the SAS, Israel's Sayeret Matkal, yep, they took notes from the SAS too. It's like everyone's trying to catch up to what these British dudes figured out decades ago. But here's the thing, as incredible as the SAS is, there's actually another group out there that might be even more elite. I'm talking about a unit so secretive, so skilled, that they make even the SAS look like amateurs. These guys are like the special forces of special forces, the absolute best of the best. But that's a story for another time. Israel's Sayeret Matkal, the masters of disguise. You thought the SAS was secretive. There's a unit so covert, most people in their own country don't even know they exist. We're talking about Israel's Sayeret Matkal, where going undercover isn't just a tactic, it's a way of life. These guys are like real-life James Bonds, but way more hardcore. Sayeret Matkal was set up back in 1957, and they've been Israel's go-to team for the craziest missions ever since. But here's the wild part. They're so secret that most Israelis have no clue they even exist. It's like having a superhero team in your backyard, but you never see them. Now you might be thinking, what makes these dudes so special? Well, for starters, they're absolute masters of disguise. These guys can blend in anywhere, anytime. One time they pulled off this insane mission called Operation Isotope. They dressed up as mechanics, snuck into an airport, and blew up 13 enemy planes. Just like that. It's like something out of Hollywood, but these guys did it for real. But that's not even the craziest part. Sayeret Matkal operators are like language wizards. They train so hard in different languages that they can pass as locals pretty much anywhere in the world. Imagine being able to drop into any country and sound like you've lived there your whole life. That's the level these guys are on. Their training is so intense it makes other special forces look like a walk in the park. They've got this crazy selection process that's all about pushing people to their limits. Most folks who try to join don't make it through. It's like they're trying to find superhumans or something. And get this, Sayeret Matkal's motto is, "Who dares wins," just like the British SAS. But these guys take it to a whole new level. They're always going after the most impossible missions, the ones that other units wouldn't even think about trying. Sayeret Matkal has been involved in some of the wildest operations you've never heard of. They've rescued hostages, taken out terrorist leaders, and done stuff so classified we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys. But here's the thing. As incredible as Sayeret Matkal is, they're not just about kicking butt. These guys have actually influenced special forces units all over the world. Their tactics for covert ops and gathering intel have been copied by everyone from the British SAS to the US Delta Force. It's like they wrote the book on how to be a badass secret agent. So next time you hear about some impossible mission that saved a bunch of lives, chances are it might have been Sayeret Matkal. These dudes are basically Israel's real-life superheroes, working in the shadows to keep people safe. But hold up, because as mind-blowing as Sayeret Matkal is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more mysterious. I'm talking about a group so secretive, so elite, that they make even Sayeret Matkal look like amateurs. These guys are like the ghosts of the Special Forces world, and their story is even crazier. Russia's Alpha Group, the Cold War killers. Imagine a Special Forces unit so hardcore, they actually shoot at each other with real bullets during training. Sounds insane, right? Well, for Russia's Alpha Group, that's just another Tuesday. But their most shocking mission? Taking out a president in less time than it takes to order a pizza. Alpha Group ain't your average Special Forces team. These dudes were created back in the Cold War when Russia wanted a secret weapon that could take on anyone. And boy, did they deliver. We're talking about guys who are basically trained to be perfect killing machines. You think shooting a target from 100 yards is tough? These Alpha Group operators can do it while hanging upside down from a helicopter. Yeah, you heard that right. They're doing circus acrobat stuff while nailing bullseyes. It's like they're playing some crazy video game, but in real life. But that's nothing compared to their training. Most Special Forces units do intense stuff, but Alpha Group takes it to a whole new level. These guys actually fight each other with live ammo during training. It's like they decided regular paintball wasn't extreme enough, so they swapped in real bullets. That's how they make sure their operators don't flinch when the real bullets start flying. And when it comes to real missions, Alpha Group doesn't mess around. One time, they stormed this palace in Afghanistan and took out the president in just 43 minutes. That's faster than most people's commute to work. They went in, did their job, and got out before anyone knew what hit them. Alpha Group is basically Russia's way of saying, "Oh, you got special forces? That's cute." These guys are the answer to every other country's elite units. It's like Russia looked at units like Delta Force and the SAS and said, "Hold my vodka." But here's the thing. As terrifying as Alpha Group is, they're not just about brute force. These dudes are smart too. They're trained in all kinds of crazy skills, from hacking computers to speaking multiple languages. It's like they're trying to be James Bond, Jason Bourne, and the Terminator all rolled into one. Alpha Group has been involved in some of the wildest operations you've never heard of. They've taken down terrorist cells, rescued hostages in impossible situations, and done stuff so classified we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys. So next time you hear about some impossible mission that saved a bunch of lives or took out some major threat, there's a chance it might have been Alpha Group. These guys are like Russia's real-life superheroes, working in the shadows to get stuff done. But hold up, because as mind-blowing as Alpha Group is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more hardcore. I'm talking about a group so elite, so specialized, that they make even Alpha Group look like amateurs. These guys are like the special forces of special forces, and their story is even crazier. The French GIGN, Masters of Hostage Rescue. You thought Alpha Group was hardcore? Wait till you hear about the French unit that trains by having their own guys shoot live rounds at them. These dudes are so good at rescuing hostages, they once took out 4 terrorists on a hijacked plane faster than you can say croissant. GIGN ain't your average special forces team. These guys were created after some terrorists killed a bunch of Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics. France was like, we need our own super team to handle this kind of crazy stuff. And boy, did they deliver. These GIGN operators are absolute wizards when it comes to rescuing hostages in wild situations. They've been on over 1,800 missions since they started, which is nuts. That's like doing a dangerous mission every week for decades. But here's the really crazy part. They've freed more than 600 hostages since they started. That's a whole lot of people who owe their lives to these French dudes. Now you might be thinking, how do they get so good at this stuff? Well, their training is absolutely insane. These guys actually train by having real people shoot live rounds at them. Yeah, you heard that right. They're dodging real bullets in training. It's like they decided regular paintball wasn't extreme enough, so they swapped in real guns. That's how they make sure their operators don't flinch when the real bullets start flying. But that ain't even the craziest part of their training. These GIGN guys gotta be in ridiculous shape. They have to be able to run a whole marathon in full gear while carrying a 45-pound backpack. That's like running 26 miles with a kindergartner strapped to your back. And they gotta do all this while being ready to take out bad guys at any moment. GIGN has been involved in some of the wildest operations you've never heard of, but there's one mission that really shows how insane these guys are. Back in 1994, some terrorists hijacked an Air France plane. GIGN was like, not on our watch. They stormed that plane, took out all 4 terrorists, and rescued 173 hostages. And get this, they did it so fast that by the time most people heard about the hijacking, it was already over. These guys are basically who you call when you need a miracle. Regular cops dealing with a hostage situation, they're gonna call GIGN. Terrorists take over a building, GIGN is on the way. It's like they're France's real-life superheroes, always ready to swoop in and save the day. But here's the thing, GIGN ain't just about rescuing hostages. They're trained to handle all kinds of crazy situations. They can do everything from protecting VIPs to taking down drug cartels. It's like they're prepared for any wild scenario you can think of. And get this, these GIGN dudes are so secretive that French law actually makes it illegal to publish their pictures or names. It's like they're trying to be real-life ninjas or something. You could walk past one of these guys on the street and never know you just saw one of the world's most elite soldiers. But hold up, because as incredible as GIGN is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more versatile. I'm talking about a group so elite, so specialized, that they can operate in any environment on Earth. These guys are like the Swiss Army knife of special forces, and their story is even crazier. Canada's JTF2, the Silent Professionals. Forget maple syrup and hockey. Canada's got a secret weapon that's changing the game in special ops. These guys are breaking world records and taking names, all while staying completely off the radar. But how do they do it? Meet JTF2, Canada's ultra-secret special forces unit. These dudes are so hush-hush that the Canadian government didn't even admit they existed until 2005. That's right, for over a decade these guys were running around doing crazy missions and nobody knew about it. JTF2 ain't your average soldiers. These guys are experts at sneaking into places nobody else can go and taking out high-value targets. They're like ghosts with guns, man. One minute they're not there, the next minute some bad guy's been neutralized. But here's the really wild part. These JTF-2 operators are trained to fight in pretty much any environment you can think of. Arctic warfare? No problem. They'll take on the snow and ice like it's nothing. Underwater demolitions? They're all over it, blowing stuff up beneath the waves. It's like they took every crazy James Bond scenario and said, yeah, we can do that. Now you might be thinking, how good are these guys really? Well, check this out. JTF-2 operators have to be able to shoot a 1.5-inch group at 100 meters after running 2 miles. That's like sprinting across town and then threading a needle with a bullet. It's insane. But that ain't even the craziest part. One time, a JTF-2 sniper took out a Taliban commander from over a mile away. Yeah, you heard that right. Over a mile. That shot was so far, it set a world record. These guys are out here making other snipers look like they're playing with Nerf guns. JTF-2 has been involved in some of the wildest operations you've never heard of. They've been all over the world, doing stuff so classified we might never know about it. Afghanistan, Iraq, Haiti. Wherever there's trouble, JTF-2 is probably there, working in the shadows. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to work with them. The US, Britain, Australia, they all want a piece of JTF-2's expertise. It's like Canada's got this secret recipe for making super soldiers and everyone else is trying to figure it out. But here's the thing, as incredible as JTF-2 is, they're not just about kicking butt. These guys are smart too. They're trained in all kinds of skills, from gathering intel to negotiating with hostage takers. It's like they took the brains of a spy, the skills of a commando, and the stealth of a ninja and mixed them all together. So next time you think of Canada, don't just picture moose and mounties. Remember that they've got some of the most elite soldiers in the world, ready to take on any mission, anywhere, anytime. JTF-2 is Canada's way of saying, we're not just about being nice, we can be deadly too. But hold up, because as mind-blowing as JTF-2 is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more elite. I'm talking about a group so secretive, so specialized, that they make even JTF-2 look like amateurs. These guys are like the special forces of special forces, and their story is even crazier. Germany's KSK, the Silent Shadows. Imagine a unit so secretive they're like ghosts with guns. That's Germany's KSK for you. These guys are the real deal when it comes to special forces. They're so good at staying hidden, you'd never know they were there until it's too late. The KSK came about because Germany got caught with its pants down. Back in the day, some terrorists took German citizens hostage, and Germany couldn't do anything about it. They had to call in other countries for help. That's when Germany said, never again, and boom, the KSK was born. These dudes are experts at working deep behind enemy lines without anyone knowing they're there. It's like they're playing the world's most intense game of hide and seek, but with guns and bad guys. They can sneak in, do their job, and get out before anyone even realizes what happened. But here's the crazy part. Their training is insane. These KSK guys have to survive in the wilderness for weeks with almost nothing. It's like the world's worst camping trip. They gotta avoid getting caught while living off the land, and this ain't no reality TV show. It's how they prepare for real missions. You think that's tough? Wait till you hear this. KSK operators have to be able to march 60 miles through the mountains in just 20 hours. That's like walking from New York City to Philadelphia, but through mountains and in less than a day. And they gotta do it carrying all their gear. It's no wonder only the toughest of the tough make it through. The KSK doesn't mess around when it comes to their gear either. They've got some of the most advanced weapons and tech out there. These guys are equipped to handle any situation, whether they're rescuing hostages or taking out terrorists. It's like they've got a gadget for everything, just like in those spy movies. But the KSK ain't just about having cool toys. They're all about using their brains too. These guys are masters of stealth and surprise. They've got special tactics that let them sneak around without anyone noticing. It's like they can become invisible when they need to. One time, the KSK showed just how good they are. They managed to capture a Bosnian war criminal who'd been hiding for years. This dude thought he was safe, but the KSK tracked him down and nabbed him. It's like they're the world's best manhunters or something. The KSK is basically Germany's way of saying, we can handle our own problems now. They're the go-to team for any crazy situation that needs some serious skills to solve. Whether it's rescuing hostages, taking out terrorists, or doing some top-secret mission, the KSK is on it. But here's the thing. As incredible as the KSK is, there's actually another unit out there that might be even more secretive. I'm talking about a group so mysterious, so specialized, that they make even the KSK look like amateurs. These guys are like the special forces of special forces, and their story is even wilder. Poland's Grom, the thunder from the east. When Polish diplomats got killed in Lebanon, Poland didn't just get mad, they got even. Enter Grom, a unit so versatile and deadly, they're called the Surgeons. But here's the kicker. They went from zero to hero faster than any other special forces unit in history. How'd they pull it off? Grom ain't your average special forces team. These guys were born out of tragedy back in 1990 when some Polish diplomats got wasted in Lebanon. Poland was like, we need our own badass team to handle this kind of crazy stuff. And boy did they deliver. But here's the wild part. Poland didn't have any special forces experience, so what did they do? They sent their best guys to train with the most elite units in the world. We're talking US Delta Force, British SAS, and even Israel's Sayeret Matkal. It's like they took all the best parts of every top unit and rolled them into one super team. Now, you might be thinking, how good can these new guys really be? Well, check this out. Grom operators gotta run 5 miles in 34 minutes while carrying 60 pounds of gear. That's like sprinting a 5K with a small kid strapped to your back. It's insane. But that ain't even the craziest part of their training. These Grom dudes go through some seriously messed up tests. They get sleep deprived, starved, and put through crazy psychological games. It's like they're trying to break these guys before they even start the real training. Grom ain't just about being tough though. These guys are smart too. They're trained in all kinds of crazy skills, from Arctic warfare to counter-terrorism. It's like they're ready for any wild situation you can think of. Need someone to fight in the desert? Grom's got you. Gotta take out some terrorists in the middle of a blizzard? Grom's your team. But here's where it gets really wild. During the Iraq War, Grom showed the world what they could do. These Polish badasses captured a bunch of Saddam Hussein's officials like it was nothing. They went in, did their job, and got out before anyone knew what hit them. It's like they were playing real-life Call of Duty or something. Grom's been involved in some of the craziest operations you've never heard of. They've taken down terrorist cells, rescued hostages in impossible situations, and done stuff so classified we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to work with them. The US, Britain, Germany, they all want Grom on their team when things get tough. It's like Poland's got this secret recipe for making super soldiers and everyone else is trying to figure it out. Australia's SASR, the Desert Ghosts. Imagine a special forces unit so hardcore they make the Australian outback look like a playground. SASR operators don't just survive in extreme conditions, they thrive in them. But what happens when you drop these desert ghosts into the mountains of Afghanistan? Australia's Special Air Service Regiment, or SASR, ain't your average military unit. These guys are like the ultimate survivors, trained to handle the toughest environments on Earth. They were set up back in 1957, taking inspiration from the British SAS. But the Aussies took that blueprint and cranked it up to 11. The SASR trains in the Australian outback, where it's so hot your boots might literally melt. Yeah, you heard that right. Their gear can't even handle how extreme their training is. It's like they're preparing for the apocalypse or something. But that's nothing compared to what these guys can actually do. SASR operators gotta be able to survive in the wilderness for weeks with just a knife. No fancy gear, no supplies, just them and a blade. It's like the world's worst camping trip, but it's how they get ready for real missions. These dudes are experts at covert surveillance and reconnaissance. They can sneak around behind enemy lines without anyone knowing they're there. It's like they're playing the world's most intense game of hide and seek, but with guns and bad guys. SASR ain't just about being tough though. These guys are smart too. They're trained to handle all kinds of crazy situations. Need someone to raid a terrorist hideout? SASR's got you. Gotta rescue some hostages in the middle of nowhere? SASR's your team. But here's where it gets really wild. During the war in Afghanistan, SASR showed the world what they could do. These Aussie badasses actually took down a bunch of Taliban fighters while riding horses. It's like they turned into some kind of modern-day cowboys. Can you imagine being a Taliban fighter and seeing a bunch of dudes on horses coming at you with guns blazing? That's some movie-level stuff right there. SASR's been involved in some of the craziest operations you've never heard of. They've done stuff so classified we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys, working in the shadows to get things done. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to work with them. The US, Britain, New Zealand, they all want SASR on their team when things get tough. It's like Australia's got this secret recipe for making super soldiers and everyone else is trying to figure it out. India's Marcos, the Sea Devils. Ever wonder what happens when you combine Navy SEALs, mountain commandos and underwater ninjas? India did, and the result is Marcos, a special forces unit so versatile they make other elite troops look like one-trick ponies. Marcos ain't your average military unit. These guys were set up back in 1987 to protect India's massive coastline and all their offshore stuff. But they ain't just about swimming. These dudes can fight anywhere from deep underwater to high up in the mountains. Now you might be thinking, how tough can these guys really be? Well, check this out. Marcos operators gotta hold their breath underwater for 3 whole minutes. That's like holding your breath for a commercial break and then some. But that ain't even the craziest part. These guys also gotta swim 12 kilometers in full gear. That's like swimming across a lake while carrying a small child on your back. But Marcos ain't just about being tough in the water. These guys go through this insane thing called Hell Week. It's like the worst vacation ever. They get tortured to see if they'll break. Yeah, you heard that right. Tortured. It's like they're trying to make sure these guys can handle anything bad guys might throw at them. Marcos has been in some wild situations. One time they swam through shark-infested waters to take out some pirates. It's like they were living out some crazy action movie, but for real. Can you imagine being a pirate and seeing a bunch of dudes pop out of the water with guns? That's some scary stuff right there. These guys are so hardcore that only 2 out of 100 people who try to join actually make it. That's right, 98% of folks who want to be Marcos don't cut it. It's like trying to get into the world's toughest club, but instead of a bouncer, you gotta deal with sharks and torture. Marcos is basically India's Swiss Army knife for anything involving water. Need someone to sneak onto a beach and take out some bad guys? Marcos has got you. Gotta rescue some hostages on a ship? Marcos is your team. These guys can handle pretty much anything you throw at them, as long as it's wet. But Marcos ain't just about water stuff. They've been involved in all kinds of crazy missions on land too. They've fought terrorists in the mountains, protected VIPs, and done stuff so secret we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys, no matter where they are. Marcos is India's way of saying, we can handle our own problems, whether they're in the ocean, on land, or anywhere in between. They took the best parts of other special forces units and made something even crazier. It's like they looked at Navy SEALs and thought, that's cool, but what if they could fight on mountaintops too? New Zealand's NZs SAS, the Phantoms of the Pacific. Think Marcos is impressive? Wait till you hear about the guys who can disappear in the jungle for weeks. New Zealand's NZs SAS is so good at what they do, they make most special forces look like they're just playing hide and seek. NZs SAS ain't your average military unit. These guys were set up back in 1955, taking inspiration from the British SAS. But the Kiwis took that blueprint and made it their own. They're like the quiet kids in class who turn out to be secret geniuses. These NZs SAS operators are absolute wizards when it comes to jungle warfare and long-range reconnaissance. They can sneak around in dense forests without making a sound. It's like they become one with the trees or something. And when it comes to gathering intel behind enemy lines, these guys are the best in the business. But that ain't even the craziest part. NZs SAS trains in some of the most insane terrain you can imagine. We're talking rugged mountains, thick forests, and crazy coastlines. It's like they took all the toughest parts of New Zealand and said, yeah, let's train there. These guys can handle any environment you throw at them. Now you might be thinking, how tough can these Kiwis really be? Well, check this out. NZs SAS operators gotta be able to survive in the wilderness for weeks with barely any supplies. That's right, weeks. It's like the world's worst camping trip, but it's how they get ready for real missions. They learn to live off the land, find water, and stay hidden. It's some real-life survivor stuff, but with guns. NZs SAS ain't just about being tough though. These guys are smart too. They're trained in all kinds of crazy skills, from gathering intel to taking out high-value targets. It's like they took the brains of a spy, the skills of a commando, and the stealth of a ninja and mixed them all together. But here's where it gets really wild. During the war in Afghanistan, NZs SAS showed the world what they could do. These Kiwi badasses helped take down a bunch of terrorists while barely firing a shot. It's like they were playing real-life Metal Gear Solid or something. They snuck in, did their job, and got out before anyone knew what hit them. NZs SAS has been involved in some of the wildest operations you've never heard of. They've been all over the world, doing stuff so classified we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys, working in the shadows to get things done. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to work with them. The US, Britain, Australia, they all want NZs SAS on their team when things get tough. It's like New Zealand's got this secret recipe for making super soldiers and everyone else is trying to figure it out. Pakistan's SSG, the Maroon Berets. You thought NZs SAS was elite. Wait till you hear about the guys who can fight in places where others can't even breathe. Pakistan's SSG, the Maroon Berets, are like the ultimate warriors of South Asia. These dudes are so tough they make other special forces look like they're just playing soldier. SSG was set up back in 1956 because Pakistan needed their own badass answer to India's special forces. But these guys ain't just about keeping up with the neighbors. They turned themselves into some of the toughest soldiers on Earth. Now you might be thinking, how tough can these guys really be? Well, check this out. SSG operators got to go through this insane thing called Hell Week. It's like the worst vacation ever. They get starved and sleep deprived for days. Yeah, you heard that right. Days without food or sleep. It's like they're trying to make sure these guys can handle anything bad guys might throw at them. But that ain't even the craziest part. These SSG dudes are experts at high-altitude warfare. They can fight in places so high up that other soldiers can't even breathe right. It's like they're part mountain goat or something. They train in some of the highest mountains in the world, getting ready to fight in places most people can't even visit. SSG ain't just about being tough though. These guys are trained to fight in every kind of environment you can think of. Deserts? No problem. Jungles? They got it covered. It's like they took every crazy action movie setting and said, yeah, we can fight there. But here's where it gets really wild. One time, SSG showed the world what they could do when they stormed a hijacked plane. These Pakistani badasses took out all the terrorists in just 30 seconds. That's right, 30 seconds. It's like they were moving in fast forward while everyone else was in slow motion. SSG's been involved in some of the craziest operations you've never heard of. They've fought terrorists, protected VIPs, and done stuff so secret we might never know about it. It's like they're always one step ahead of the bad guys, no matter where they are. These guys are so good at what they do that other countries are always trying to learn from them. It's like Pakistan's got this secret recipe for making super soldiers and everyone else is trying to figure it out. SSG is basically Pakistan's way of saying, we've got some of the toughest soldiers on Earth. They took the harsh environments of their country and used them to make soldiers that can handle anything. It's like they looked at their mountains and deserts and thought, let's use this to make the ultimate warriors. Spain's UOE, the underwater ninjas. What if I told you there's a special forces unit that can turn the ocean itself into a weapon? Spain's UOE isn't just secretive, they're practically invisible. These underwater commandos make James Bond look like an amateur swimmer. UOE stands for Unidad de Operaciones Especiales, and these guys are Spain's answer to protecting their massive coastline. We're talking about a country with over 3,000 miles of coast, so they needed some serious badasses to keep it safe. That's where UOE comes in. These dudes are like the ultimate underwater ninjas. They're experts at sneaking around beneath the waves and blowing stuff up without anyone knowing they were even there. It's like they can breathe water or something. UOE operators are trained to handle all kinds of crazy underwater missions, from planting explosives on enemy ships to sneaking onto beaches undetected. But that's nothing compared to their training. Get this, these guys have to escape from a helicopter underwater while wearing all their gear. Yeah, you heard that right. They dumped these dudes in the water, strapped them into a mock helicopter, and they gotta figure out how to get out before they run out of air. It's like some kind of crazy underwater Houdini act. UOE operators ain't just good at holding their breath though. These guys can swim for miles in freezing cold water while carrying heavy equipment. It's like they're part fish or something. They train in some of the roughest waters you can imagine, getting ready to sneak into places most people can't even reach. But here's where it gets really wild. One time, UOE showed the world what they could do when they infiltrated a terrorist camp by swimming in from the ocean at night. These Spanish badasses snuck in, did their job, and got out before anyone even knew they were there. It's like they were ghosts or something, just appearing and disappearing without a trace. UOE's been involved in all kinds of secret missions we'll probably never hear about. They're Spain's go-to team for anything involving water. Need someone to check out a suspicious underwater object? UOE's got you covered. Gotta sneak some agents onto an enemy beach? UOE's your team. These guys can handle pretty much anything you throw at them, as long as it's wet. UOE is basically Spain's way of saying, don't mess with our oceans. They took their love of the sea and turned it into one of the deadliest special forces units out there. It's like they looked at their beautiful beaches and thought, let's use this to make some of the scariest soldiers on Earth. But you know what? As crazy impressive as UOE is, they're just one piece of a much bigger picture. All these special forces units we've talked about, they're changing the way wars are fought. It's not about big armies anymore. It's about small teams of super skilled operators who can go anywhere and do anything. And that's what we got to talk about next, why these units are so important in today's world.